Hi everybody, it's Mrs. Peachy, and today we're going to start the lessons in biology just by looking at an overview of how organisms fit into their environment and some of the terms that you guys are going to be seeing throughout the course of the year. We like to look at kind of living things as a whole and living things in their environment, how they interact with each other, how they struggle to survive, and that includes both other living things, their strive to maintain internal homeostasis in their bodies, as well as their interactions with their non-living environment. So lots of different aspects that we'll be kind of looking at and pulling out throughout the year, and hopefully coming up with coming to a full circle at the end and kind of seeing that. So just to begin with a few terms, things that you may have heard of before, but I want to make sure you guys have them straight. And that's the difference between climate and weather. You will hear talk of climate change, and that's difficult for some people to process when their day-to-day weather can fluctuate so greatly, and even their weather from one year to the next can be so different. So climate, remember, is long-term. It's averages over long periods of time, and when we talk of climate change, we're looking at definite changes in trends over decades, over centuries, not changes from year to year. So sometimes you have to back up a little bit and wait to see what's actually happening. And in terms of climate change you may hear about now, it's been something that we've been watching and looking at for a long time, and seeing that this trend is not just a fluctual variation from year to year, but is actually an upward trend in global temperature. When we look at how heat affects the Earth, it's a huge impact, right? We have solar energy from the sun, and the light, the heat, even the ultraviolet radiation play a role in our ecosystem. For the most part, what makes it through the atmosphere, including the ozone layer, is going to be light, visible light. And that light will hit the ground, and it will absorb, and it will re-radiate as lower energy as heat. Now, a lot of things affect that in terms of how much is going to be absorbed. Water absorbs lots and lots of heat, and it can hold on to it, but it also has a high reflectivity, so it reflects quite a bit as well. Think about water as it stores heat. It's a good storage facility for heat. Snow and ice reflects the majority of the light that comes in. Aside from those differences in surface and how they affect heat distribution on Earth, the biggest thing is that we're a sphere. Because of our spherical nature, the surface of the Earth is curved, right? So, let's go back a slide, maybe. So, where the light shines on the flattest part of the Earth, which is right at the pole or at the equator, you will get less of that light kind of spreading out, right? The less it spreads out, the more concentrated it is, the warmer the surface is going to be. Where it strikes at the poles, the surface is much more curved. Therefore, that light that comes in gets spread out a lot, and you get less energy per unit of area on the ground, and so you end up with cooler temperatures. So the curvature of the Earth is a huge component, which means that latitude plays a large role, right? Higher latitudes, colder temperatures; lower latitudes, warmer temperatures. Now, looking at the factors that influence living things, we can look at both biotic and abiotic factors. Remember that biotic means living, so this would be things like predator-prey relationships, food sources, parasites, disease, that kind of thing. Abiotic would be non-living factors, the temperature, the rainfall, moisture content, the water movement, whether the pH of the soil. There's lots of different things you can think of there, but all of these things go into affecting the ecosystem of any organism. We also say that an organism has what we call a biological niche. Some people call it a niche. This is, quote, the full range of physical and biological conditions it needs to survive, such as climate, food, etc. So it's basically its specific place and function in that ecosystem. And there is a principle in biology called the competitive exclusion principle, and this basically states that no two species can occupy the same niche at the same habitat at the same time, because they're going to compete with each other to the exclusion of one of them, right? So if they try to do this, they're going to be competing for space, for food, for other resources, and only one of them will be able to make it. And this is a driving force in evolution, competition to survive. There are different ways in which organisms can interact with each other. We call these ways different types of relationships. So we have predation. That's one of the types of relationships. That one should be pretty self-explanatory. Somebody's going to get eaten and somebody's going to eat it. And then we have some symbiotic relationships. These are a little bit different because the organism directly relies on the other organism for survival. There's beneficial ones like mutualism and commensalism. Mutualism means that both species are going to benefit, and in fact they both rely on each other for survival. The bee pollinating the flower is a great example of a mutualistic relationship. The bee relies on the flower for nectar, and the flower relies on the bee as a vector for pollen distribution. So without the bee, pollen wouldn't be able to spread and the flower wouldn't be able to reproduce, and without the flower the bee wouldn't have any food. Then we have mutualistic relationships. I do have a clownfish and an anemone out there, although some people tell me that is actually a, I have it as a commensalism. Some people say it's a mutualistic relationship, but I'm not entirely sure what the function of the benefit to the anemone is here. But the clownfish lives within the anemone. The clownfish has a mucus that it secretes that makes it so that it doesn't get affected by the stinging cells of the anemone, so it can live within it for protection. Again, I don't know what the benefit to the anemone is. It might be that it cleans the anemone or keeps certain organisms away that might hurt the anemone, but that I'm not 100% sure of. But the definition of commensalism is one that benefits and the other is not harmed or helped. And then we have parasitism. We've got this nasty worm growing out of this guy's scalp here. One benefits, one is harmed, right? So things like a tick, a mosquito, a leech, all of those are considered parasites, and many, many more that are way worse. Think tapeworm and stuff like that. Finally, we have what's known as ecological succession, and this is how the environment changes with time. All environments initially started off using primary succession, basically where there was nothing at all, and then eventually certain organisms were able to move into the area. Really, we only see this in areas today like after a volcanic eruption where no soil exists at all. When you have soil, you have microbes. When you have microbes, plants can grow and stuff like that. So we have to have no soil. So a good example would be, the surface of Mars. If you were able to grow anything on the surface of Mars, it first has to go through primary succession. Of course, it lacks lots of other things that would enable anything to grow, but, just as an example. So what usually starts off growing are things called lichen, and lichen are a symbiotic relationship between an algae and a fungus. And the algae is photosynthetic, so it provides food for the fungus, and the fungus provides a lattice work, kind of a structure to be able to protect the algae. And actually be able to get water and hold water for the algae as well. So it's a good relationship, and that's what is one of the pioneer species. I think the lichen also secretes some sort of an enzyme or an acid that can leach minerals out of the rock, and that is a form of chemical weathering, so then it starts to break that rock down and turn it into soil. And then we have secondary succession, and this happens after, after a wildfire where everything gets destroyed, but it only takes a few years to restore it to its normal conditions, starting with small ground cover and then small trees and so on and so forth. Now, energy always flows from the sun outwards. Starts with the sun, goes to the producers, from the producers to the primary consumers to secondary, and so on to tertiary. And as it moves through these levels, the amount of available energy becomes less and less and less. Only 10% of the amount that was available on the level before is available at that level. The rest is converted to heat, and it's being used. So these producers are way more, you get more bang for your buck in terms of calories there. Sorry about that. The other thing here is, of course, we do have some ecosystems that their main source of energy is not the sun, but occurs in the very deep sea in these what are called hydrothermal vents, and they are relatively new. So whole ecosystems exist down there that rely not on the sun for energy, even indirectly, but on the earth for energy, which is kind of cool. Okay, so that is it as an introductory to our biology. Hopefully you found that to be a little bit informing, and you can now go on to your question assignment.